and welcome to Green Comfort School of Herbal Medicine. I'm Teresa Boardwine. I am a registered herbalist with the American Herbalist Guild, and I've been an herbalist for about 32 years. Um, my foray into herbal medicine um, came when I moved to Europe as a very young person. I was 24, and I found my first herb book, Back to Eden by Jethro Kloss. I found it at a Armed Forces Exchange bookstore called Stars and Stripes in Italy. Changed my life. The next purchase was Herb Companion magazine, and in the back of it was the personal ads and advertisements. Back in the day, it said to put a self-addressed stamped envelope and send it to Sperryville, Virginia for a catalog from a place called, I'll get back to that. So the herb shop that was in Sperryville was run by a person that I now know and fondly retell this story because that was the first place I ordered herbs, was from the herb shop in Sperryville, and I am literally 6 miles away from it many years later. So I think that was my calling to plant medicine, calling to this area of the Virginia Blue Ridge Mountains. I When I reached the point of wanting plant medicine in my life and having the door to open, then it all just came flooding in. Read my book, changed my diet, ordered herbs, started really just investigating things in the natural marketplaces of Europe. First Italy, then Germany. The cure house, the natural food stores were amazing, and the apothecaries. So I always wanted an apothecary since 1982, and I'm sitting in mine. I have created the Green Comfort School of Herbal Medicine and Herbal Apothecary. And I teach Herbal Apothecary since, I don't know, I guess 95, 6, 7, somewhere in there. So I've seen such an amount of, people setting up their own apothecaries, because that's what I instructed, like go and fill your pantries, fill your herb jars, find a way to make plants a part of your daily life and make it a part of your regular intake, and not just wait until you're sick. This should be integrated medicine. Herbs are, the free people's medicine. And even you've seen, war-torn countries, and people go out and dig the roots and pick the greens and feed themselves because they know native plants. And we've gotten it away from it in this country. So yeah, fast forward 10 years of living in Europe, teaching, going natural, going vegetarian, then vegan, then Whole Foods. I went to a Whole Food gourmet cookery school in New York City. Really was integrating whole food into my pantry, changed my diet, taught differently. I taught home economics and food nutrition, changed, everything about that into whole grains and really natural gourmet cookery. And then I went to school at Dominion Herb School in Vancouver, off the coast of Vancouver, for a summer program. And I had already found a correspondence course out of Canada, and I was working on that, living in The Hague in Holland. My story is uniquely mine. That's just where I was, and that's what I wanted to do, was become an herbalist after teaching. So I studied, I went to the Dominion Herb School summer camp, and on my way down the coastline from Vancouver through Washington, Oregon, into California, stopped at an herb shop, bought 2 books. One was The Holistic Herbal, now called The New Holistic Herbal by David Hoffman. And the one that is really about the actions of herbs and the materia medica was the second book, and it had the California School of Herbal Studies address. So I'm back in Holland. I write California School. They send me their information. I signed up, paid, was on a plane the next year and really moved there for several months and lived outside of Guerneville, and it's near Sebastopol, north of San Francisco. Um, so I went to the school. David Hoffman was my teacher, and he taught the green man approach to chemistry, which I love about him. You know, the whole first part of his herbal medicine book is part one is chemistry. It's all the phytoconstituents and the details and the chemical structures, and you really learn what the plant materials are and what we value from them before you learn what plants have those. And that's really important to learn the language. So he was very attractive to me as a teacher because of that, we'll say, foundational information that he lays down, very scientific. My brain loves that. I am also, in a way, more the other side of the brain, a creative person, but it melds well. I taught science. I need scientific approach. I need the science behind why I am so passionate about plants, and I can describe that to people and, you know, color, taste in other ways, but it's really about those plant chemicals that we're eating it for, you know, that we're making the medicine from to acquire so that our bodies can, you know, utilize really the plant materials. So David was that part of the teaching. James Green was there. He wrote the handbook of herbal medicine, you know, so he was one of my teachers. You know, it was so great to be in the company of those that also helped found the American Herbalist Guild, that I'm on their shoulders, and, you know, it's just been quite the ride. Amanda McQuaid Crawford, love that woman. She was my everyday teacher. 4 days a week, just gave the information. And she and David had studied at the National Institute of Medicinal Herbalists in the UK. And then they'd gone to Inverness, and they had been at the Findhorn as apothecars, you know, so they tended people and so on before coming. I guess Rosemary recruited them for the California school, and they were there right after. She had already left the school when I got there, and I had amazing teachers. So I graduated 91, found my way back to Virginia, my home state, and found a job as an herbalist at Smile Herb Shop in College Park, Maryland. So that kind of set me up, you know, coming out of herb school, and like, how am I going to use this? What's that going to be like to be back in the States after 10 years abroad? Am I going to find my people? What does that mean? Who uses herbs? Who sells herbs? Where am I going to, you know, integrate this knowledge into my lifestyle, but also as an income? And I was hired as an herbalist. And my boss, Tom Wolf, the owner of the shop, said, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I'm a teacher. I want to teach," you know? So right away, I set up classes. I was teaching on Saturdays, sometimes 3 hours a day, but 1 hour classes. And I was there during the week, so I always made plant medicine for people that came in and just asked for help or wanted a tea formula and that sort of thing. It was a great beginning because I got to employ and put into practice what I just learned. And had David come out, speak, had Dr. Duke from the USDA, economic botanist, he became my mentor. That was amazing. I met Kat Meyer there. She was Kathleen at the time. And Tom had invited her in. He said, "I want you to meet this woman. Come to my office." And I met her. And I just remember seeing her. And we greeted each other. I had her come and teach. And I was like, okay, this is, something's here. And she felt the same way. She went off to Mexico, came back, called me up after she taught for me that weekend, the weekend before. She said, "You want to start an herb school together?" And I was like, "Heck yeah, I do." Yes. The answer is yes. So we named it Dreamtime Center for Herbal Studies, and we opened in 1996, and we had a 7-year run in this county, in Rappahannock County. So again, I'm in Northern Virginia, driving an hour and a half, and it was home. It called me home. Plants called me home. The finding that herb catalog, you know, called me home. It was Faith Mountain Herbs, by the way. And it no longer exists in that form, but it does in my heart because it brought me to this area where I now live, and I've been here since 2005. So I've run my herb school here almost 20 years in this location. My mother's mother, we just called Granny. So Granny Ashworth raised her 8 children, had them all at home, raised them there in, kind of a poor county that became industrial because of Bassett Furniture Industries. So I'm from Bassett, Virginia. Granny had the homestead. Back when, before it was popular to homestead, they had the cellar, she canned, she froze, she had an apple orchard that she tended herself. I remember blueberry bushes out front, huckleberry she called it. I think it's, bilberry's a huckleberry basically. They're not here in my area, but further north, and it's a smaller blueberry, but it reminds me of that. And she had cherry trees and pear trees. She raised the long stem flowers for the church altars, the big bouquets. She made pies. Oh, and just depending on the day when she was baking, there could be 10 pies in boxes with cellophane, beautifully done meringues with beads of honey, but it's when they bead up, just perfectly done. She could whip out a crust. I did not get that from my granny. I do not make crust, and but I do like to cook. And so there was always food. There was corn. The best cream corn I've ever had in my life was from Granny. So a few things I remember about the healing properties of that mountain, that red dirt, is one time I had a tick on the top of my head. And that was the first, revelation that ticks bite you and and you have to pull them out. So I had some adults working on me, and I think it was Granny that get the tobacco, and she did use the tobacco, but I think maybe that was the poultice afterwards, to make sure it all came out. And another time I got stung by bees. And usually that's red mud. That's the red earth of the clay. And she would just mix it a little bit. I don't know what she mixed with it other than water, but she made a little sticky, maybe a teaspoon of flour. But she made a little poultice to pull out the bee venom. She knew which plants to gather, like creasy salad. She'd say, I'm just going to go hunt a peck of greens. Hunt your greens. Before I knew what that was about at all. You go out and hunt greens. So that's wild food foraging right there. My grandma knew wild food foraging. She had the best strawberry patch. And it went for rows and miles, it seemed. I mean, just long rows of strawberries. My favorite fruit in the world. And probably because Granny Ashford grew them. Froze them with a little sugar on them. Oh, still my favorite cake is strawberry shortcake. That's what I'd ask for on my birthday. But Granny was just that kind of earth woman. She had an earth body. She was definitely, hands-on. I didn't have her long enough in my life. I feel like that early exposure had influenced me heavily. She passed when I was 14. And so there was a heart problem. And she didn't have her medication, or maybe had gone off medication at the time and passed suddenly. So it was a shock to the whole family. My mother was the oldest daughter of the 8, one older brother older than her. And she picked up a few things, but I never saw her wring a chicken snack, made chicken and dumplings for afternoon church, after church Sunday dinner,
She's a little more modern.
Never saw. My mother wanted pretty shoes, painted nails, and to work in an office, and she did. And she also was really good with numbers, so she ran her own income tax business as well as working for Bassett Furniture Industries. So I think that, I was born in the 57, so that culture was, don't breastfeed and get the heck off the farm. There was enough of that being raised up, Southern Appalachian dirt poor, and had everything they needed, but still had to work hard to get there. and she was going to make sure she worked hard to get to the next level. And yeah, I give her a lot of credit. She really did. But I am so grateful that I had both, because mom, whatever she was passionate about, she was going to go full in. And being self-employed and having her own way to buy land, which she did, draw up a house and have it built, which she did, and just kind of that force of nature, Taurus person.
Was she single?
My mother at the time, no, she and my dad were married for 21 years or so, 27. I was 21 when they separated. Well, and I say the beauty of that is my stepmom is just amazing, and I've learned so much from her. So as far as my lineage, now we're going deeper Appalachia, because it's over the other mountain range over near the Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee border. So if I travel from where I am in Northern Virginia, it's 6 hours. It's 300 miles. But Elsie has my same last name. She's Boardwine. I've maintained the family name for what that's worth. It's my lineage. I think it's only from Southwest Virginia, and my dad had moved over a 3-hour drive to where my mom was from. So that they were both in Bassett. So stepmom down by Abington, Bristol, Bluefield, West Virginia, in that tip, and it's Russell County. And I call her the original Poke Salad Annie. She just is coal miner's daughter, grew up again, poor but didn't know it, because her mom was such a pioneer woman that she made beautiful white linen blouses for, I'm pretty sure there was 11 of them at one time, children. She made their blouses out of this linen and starched it so that it was gorgeous for them to wear to school, with almost uniform white blouse, navy jumpers. And Elsie is still, I could say my best friend, because we can together. We bust open the walnuts in the wintertime and make a walnut cake. We just went down and made apple butter and applesauce, literally 12 cases. So that's 12 dozen cases of both applesauce and apple butter. And of course that goes to all the family, and we bring home a lot, and of course we eat it and share it, and it's her apples from her trees. She's got 5 trees: Wolf River, Early June, Granny Smith, and a nice little red apple that's sweet. So that's just, she's amazing. She also eats poke salad, so she'll get the big leaves, not even just the little ones. I'm like, Elsie, you can't eat that. She's like, child, I've been doing it all my life. I guess I can. She washes them. She pats them in meal, which is always cornmeal, and then fries them. And we had that one time I was there with cornbread and a slice of tomato, and I thought that was the best eating.
Sounds
So good.
Oh my
None of this mushing it down, cooking it 3 times, throwing away the water. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just saying, from my Southern Appalachian roots, people are a little bit more brazen. We don't have to put caution by everything, because they've learned what to do and what not to do in ways in which I wouldn't even understand. Right. So I can tell you that we tell people not to eat poke unless it's small. Okay, so I do that with my wild food foraging class, early spring, get the shoots. I might snap some asparagus, dig some burdock, and we have this roots and shoots kind of idea, stir fry, delicious. That's it. That's all I'm going to eat. But Elsie, she cans it, so she has it all winter. Cans the greens of poke. And this time, just a few weeks ago, I was there, and she harvested about 6 pokeberries native while we're out in the garden. I was like, you didn't swallow the seed, did you? She's like, yeah, about 3 of them I did. I said, okay. That's where the poison is. That's where the medicine is. That's, toxin, all that. And it's like, just put the words back in your mouth, Teresa. Not going to be true for her. I remember right out of herb school getting a call at Smile Herb Shop, and someone asked me for poke berries, dried poke berries. And I kind of coughed and maybe snickered a little bit, and it's like, nobody eats dried poke berries. There's not an industry for that. First of all, USDA, we would slap a label on it and say not for internal consumption. We would, have rules. Well, I learned cautions at herb school. I'm giving everybody the caution. So I just said, that would be toxic, and no, we would not sell that. Well, I've heard that you can do this, and I've been doing 3 a day, and it really keeps the arthritis down in my knees. This was a woman, I think Arkansas is where I'd gotten the call from. So, I filed that information. That was before I knew Elsie ate pokeberries. And then being taught by Kat and others that you should take the berry and squish it and then take the little seed out and just put the berry pulp in water, and you call it pink water, and drink that. Very cleansing. Okay, so maybe shared that a little bit, doing that a time or two, but nothing serious long term. I do harvest a fresh poke root every so often, maybe every other year, make some tincture, use it for inflamed glands, especially those nodes that are right here from strep or other things that get stuck in the nodules, lymphatic tissue. You want to poke it a little bit. You want to move it along. You want to detoxify, but it's not like my go-to detox herb, It's just, if you need something to poke that out, like especially those hard, crusty nodules, cysts, that stuff. Poke. I've used the poke root with castor oil as a poultice for fibrocystic breast, fibroids, uterine fibroids. Pack it on, layer it with towels and plastic and so on, get all that off of there and wash up. Usually we say with a little baking soda in the water because castor oil is so viscous. But we want that to penetrate. We want that to go in and break up the cyst and the nodules because the lymphatic system knows what to do. So I think her lymphatic system knows what to do. And when she gets to poke it along a little bit with her poke berries or eat little poke greens, it just gives her a cleanse.
Exposure, yeah.
Yeah. And it isn't toxic to her. She's not killing her liver. She's doing enough to be gentle in her approach based on her body and growing up with it, not being afraid of it.
Right.
So, but also
because she's listening
acknowledging, acknowledging that it has a place, but not fear-based. I think there's several things like that. She and I also dig Solomon seal root, and I taught her that one, and she loves that.
One?
Solomon seal root.
Oh, yeah.
And she uses it we make salves and oils together, and sometimes a little syrup, so that she has that because she uses it for knees, hips, the knuckles and the joints that just get stiff and pop or ache. And
do you forage those plants, or do you?
Yes, we do. So where she lives, we found some giant Solomon seal, the really tall ones. And we did go for it. So I've left it for like 5 years now, and need to go back to that patch and see if it's kind of refurbed, because I felt like we overdid it just a little bit. I didn't climb up the mountain, but it was right on the side of the bank. So we did harvest enough for both of us to have some for a while. And, my goal is never to over harvest and always look to see what the amount is there and only take if it's more than the eye can behold. And sometimes that's with those sparsely populated herbs, it is hard to detect. So you let them rest for a while. We've harvested black cohosh together, Jerusalem artichokes wild. There's several teasel root right out of the rock walls. I mean, for anybody now, we have, picture this, we have apps, we have internet, availability out in the middle of the woods almost. It's like with cell phone towers. There's so much more technology. I carry a book in my backpack and keep one in the car, the Peterson Field Guide for the Eastern United States and Central, written by Dr. Duke and Stephen Foster did the photography, both herbalists, both men, plant men, green hearts. And both have passed. So, and I find them both to be, people that I will always cherish that I got to interact with them on the planet. So I want to say that field guide is precious. Stephen signed mine, and and he just recently passed. So he find the Peterson Field Guide, look up plants, but a lot of things are based on color. So summertime is a good time to go out to really have a look. There's 5 yellow plants right now. This is the season of yellow and purple in the fall, in the autumn in Virginia. And closer to the mountains, I'm right off Shenandoah National Park. So, you take your book and you're like, key out, is that ironweed or is that a fall aster, New England aster? Or is that, Joe Pye weed or, what are all the white flowers? Is it pearly everlasting, rabbit tobacco or Indian tobacco? You might, or boneset, so you discover like what they look like. And for me, I tag my book and I still go back to things all the time. So it has taken me 30 some years and I don't know all the plants and I don't know the botany so well because I think it was a conscious decision not to wrap my mind around that part. I love the phytochemicals and I do like to know about the structure and differentiation of families, but I haven't like really committed it to memory. It's not my field. My daughter's a better botanist than I am, and I'm really grateful that other people have those skills that I have learned from. But the books, you can botanize with Newcomb's Field Guide and many others that are handy. Well, I do feel that confirmation of our suspicions or, do all you can to key it out and figure it out and, suppose this, suppose that, but let's see what it really is. I think there needs to be a little, let's meld those two together. It's like use AI responsibly, use the databases responsibly, right. And then my teaching is read it. I remember David saying, and none of this is true. And he would write it on the board. None of this is true. And I've tried to use that same adage with my students. If I'm on a rant about, and I can get on my soapbox. If I'm on a rant about how something is or makes me feel, or this is the way that I've learned, so this is the way I want to present it to you. And then I'm like, well, if that's not yours, if that's not your truth, if that doesn't ring true to you, if you believe something different already, I am not, again, trying to convert you into my belief system. I am telling you from my emphatic self how I feel or believe about this. That is not science. But if I'm telling you science and there's this, chemical constituent and it's been known to do this, that's different. That's downloadable information from actual source, not just my intuition and myself, the way I weave things together. So I think it's really fundamentally important that we as a human culture not forget what truth is. Because not everything is true. And whether it comes from the internet or not. So not everything is true. Not everything is going to be so easily attained as far as the information that gives us the background. But there's a lot of ways to use our mind actively to decipher that information. So again, getting back to none of this is true. Read something 5 times. Go to your herb books. Go to your sources. When I research to make a monograph for my materia medica or my teaching, pull out 5 books, and I'm doing 4 textbooks and people that I know, the authors of these books. Then I might go to a couple of websites and type it into PubMed, type it into WebMD, or whatever source that you find accurate. The monographs from American Botanical Council, ABC, those monographs, German Commission E. There's so many places to find accurate herb information that some of the stuff that's just being repeated is like, really? Is that true?
Did you check on that?
Yeah.
Did you look at a really credible source for that?
Right. That someone close to me got shingles, and that's what took me to look for something to use. And so that first herb book, Back to Eden by Jethro Claus, I ordered all the antispasmodic, nervines, whatever was anti-inflammatory for nerve endings that I could find in the book, and ordered them from Sperryville, Faith Mountain Herbs. So I know there was lobelia and skullcap. There was also hops. and maybe valerian, some really stinky nervines. And I did use them for the individual to help the nervous system like reset, take control, because I think steroids were the only thing that had been used. It had gone so far, and I still use St. John's wort for shingles, and I love all those plants. But yeah, that was like my in what I saw was going on, and it wasn't diagnosed properly at first in time, so it set up as neuralgia. So I learned a lot. And then before going to herb school, my next case was, yeah, I didn't get to practice in America. I mean, I was in Europe. So my first case was a secretary that had just been in the hospital and got the diagnosis of Crohn's. And she couldn't eat. And, you know, it was bloody stool. Mm-hmm. So I read up with whatever sources I had. I know I went to the American bookstore in The Hague and bought some more herb books, and I came up with wild yam as an anti-inflammatory for the bowel, for the lower intestine, large intestine. I came up with comfrey, which I freely use as needed. I do subscribe to the allantoin being one of the most healing constituents that helps as cell proliferator, and use it as needed in small amounts for a short period of time. So I do think comfrey is an amazing plant, and it called me in. So I remember putting that root decoction together, boil it down, added some peppermint because that was shown to be helpful, and that was an infusion over the decoction or added to it. And I just took her quarts of this coming out of the hospital. And it gave her a time just to, when you can't consume anything anyway, to heal the alimentary canal. And I'm not giving a prescription for anybody to follow. It was my experience. That's what I did before I ever went to herb school. I was doing a correspondence course. I did go that summer to Dominion Herb School, and then the next year I went to California school. But it was the first time I worked with herbs and just helping, trying to offer something.
And it did.
It did help.
Yeah.
Oh, she sang the praises of that tea that helped her, like, calm down the inflammation. Yeah, do the steroids, do the doctor, get the intervention. You know, get on some IV fluids if you can't retain, moisture and inflammation. But you got to reduce the inflammation. I believe in our medical establishment, and I believe in doctors, and I am grateful for procedures and life-saving medications, surgeries, all of the above. I mean, it's phenomenal where we've gotten. It's just that nobody's fault. Just saying. All the herbs were in the U.S. National Formulary. The 1906 book that I have, licorice is in there. All the plant medicines were in our knowing, in our vocabulary, in the pharmacies. You can visit some old pharmacies around the D.C. metro area, in Washington's pharmacy, the Ledbetter Museum pharmacies in Old Town Alexandria. You can visit places. You can go to the National Formulary in Wrightville, Maryland. You can find the old books. All the plant medicines are there. It was really the establishment of the American Medical Association that went after doctors who were eclectic medicine doctors or old practitioners in our country, and they shut them down because they were no longer welcomed to utilize plant, holistic, naturopathic, homeopathic medicines as a physician. So then when I come up, many years later, as an herbalist, I'm told to watch my words. Don't say heal, cure, don't say it treats. Our vocabulary.
You have these disclaimers. You're like,
became stunted. No, that's a great lead-in because, my blood just goes, because it is an active conversation still in our community, in our American Herbalist Guild or other herbal gatherings. We'll sometimes touch on that. Yeah, I'm not bringing forward any past grievances of this happened, right? That was history. So herbs went kind of underground, came back in the 70s and so on. Hippies found it, back to landers found it, and then, the old timers came in, and our profession was the Herbalist Guild. I want to say when it was, and I think it was early 80s. While I was still overseas, David Winston talks about it, David Hoffman, Michael Tierra, Feather Jones, Bridget Mars. Find that group. We've celebrated, like probably 10 years ago, the 25th anniversary of AHG. So we have an intact guild, and we have communities of herbalists that really formed this group to elevate our profession. And doing so, we've learned that dance and that walk. We most likely now, since we'll just say 90s forward, because that's my memory, I've been a part of the herb group since then. I would say we have learned words like complementary medicine. We're not alternative. We are traditional. Our medicine is the traditional. All over the planet, traditional indigenous people go out and harvest plants, use them as teas, poultices, liniments, eye washes, gargles, food, and that's their medicine.
Just like your granny did. Right?
Like Granny.
Yeah.
So it's only in doing the split with the association and so on that did not seem popular, because white man medicine, industrial revolution, all of that came, like to the forefront. Again, not criminalizing. Well, I might want to, under the whole pharmaceutical thing, development of, the high price meds that use plants and then synthesize, but that's their gig, not mine.
Mm-hmm.
Where I get a little excited is, did we ever want to be, licensed and instituted in a way that made practicing herbal medicine a line that had to go straight? Herbalists do not grow up that way. You heard my story. It's more like a spiral with lots of legs. It looks like a star. It looks unique to each and every person called to plant medicine. This is not like one size fits all. Now, the Guild has wonderful programs set up for, people that are interested, enthusiastic, maybe making their own products anyway, to become herbalists and to become, the herbal practitioner or the herbal consultant, or, I own an herb shop or I teach herbalism, and you don't want to be necessarily registered herbalist with the Guild. So we can look at that as, this is what we're offering through the AHG because it meets some of those desires to have some kind of foundational format underneath us that shores us up, that supports us, that intercedes, that gives us status. That, I like that. I was a registered teacher of the National Education Association. You have these structures that kind of shore up your career field and give it some, foundational criteria for becoming an herbalist. That's one of the biggest things I think ASG has done. Yeah. Standardized? No. Licensed? No. So there's been a big pushback, not just people in the Guild, herbalists on the planet, in the United States and North America, that readily saw that as a no. And anytime it comes up in these gatherings, it's dismissed as, the massage therapist went there. There is a training, and I'm not saying I think that's good. That's fine. Acupuncturist, homeopaths. I'm pretty sure they have a national board. You want some standardization of acupuncture, perhaps, but did you learn this way or that way? But herbalists, you could learn from your granny. Rosemary rode horseback down the Oregon coast with her grandmother, picking plants with a 4-year-old. Her story's uniquely her. She doesn't need to be a member of the guild. She started the school.
Yeah.
She started the school that I went to.
Yeah.
She's you know. So I think people don't need initials, and they don't need to know that you got to do it a certain way.
So-
I think the plants do speak to us and call us in our intuitive sense way. Some people hear it in songs and poems, and some people learn, like Bach flower essences came into being because the plants were kind of telling him what they're good for, if you will, what their energies were, and homeopathics, like Here's Light, there's an energetic as well as something that can be proven. They call it proving, the herb. So I think having some structural infrastructure over herbal medicine that would then keep it in such a tight box is not something our plant industry will go for as practitioners, as teachers, as holistic, integrative traditional medicine folk, homesteaders. It's been used by, just people living a simple life, wanting to use plants instead of, a medication that might be 4 times or 400 times as strong as they need. It's just, it's more the people's medicine. So I don't think it needs to be institutionalized in that way. And I'm studying with a doctor, so I will get my green pharmacy, certificate through them, and then eventually learn everything that's in these books and know what to do with it when I start, really formulating it and integrating it into other herbs. 'Cause I want a smoke that has chamomile and passion flower in it, not just cannabis. So this little stack here represents some of my teachers and colleagues and friends. So David Hoffman was my teacher, California School of Herbal Studies, and I studied with him when it was called Therapeutic Herbalism. So this book is the one I've been teaching from for many, many years. And I used to get his curriculum and photocopy it for my students with his approval because he wanted to stop doing that part. So I did that part and made it available. So Medical Herbalism is a wonderful textbook for that foundational piece of Western herbalism, and some of the herbs that I'm using aren't in there because I'm using Ayurveda or TCM or integrated other plants from other cultures into my practice. But a wonderful starting place and a really good foundation. And then Donald Yance, I met him in 1994 when he came to AHG to present on cancer, and he had started a clinic in Connecticut and wrote the paper and came and presented in '94 and has this book. He's been treating cancer patients for years and years and years, and his product line is Natura, and he's out of Oregon. So the adaptogens in medical herbalism, and medical herbalism is a thing, and he's a registered nutritionist as well as a herbalist, and his background is vitalism. So his approach is very integrated and holistic, and the energy and the constitution is considered of the plant and the person and matching that up. I love that he uses the Chinese herbs in here, the plants that we might know from the whole global, what's available globally. So what I've learned from him on rhodiola, schizandra berry, even ashwagandha, holy basil, tulsi, the adaptogens. It's so well documented. So one of his chapters, it'll be one plant, and that's his mentor. And really he stands on his shoulders as well, and I really love that. We call out our teachers and give our appreciation and thanks, and I've really learned from Donald over the years. He's a beautiful speaker. So what I want to say is there will be 50 to 70 citations of studies for each plant. So it's really an adaptogen materia medica, because it gives you so much information, and some is like how it's used now, and some is here's the research and they're studying it because of the possibility that it could help, and this is the latest, So yeah. So anytime you can see Donald at the conferences or, get his book. And then David Winston, the other adaptogen book, and David has a more narrow focus based on the science of like Hans Sully and different ones. And there's another gentleman, I'm just not remembering his name. But David put his adaptogen books together to really talk about those that aren't just nutritive, aren't just help us slip into another gear, but have direct influence on the adrenal gland and the cortisol and the hormone productions. So it really directly affects our body's ability to adapt. So the word adaptogen, both of these gentlemen are using and using their information to back this up. Adaptogens, really the word was from the 50s when in Russia scientists were experimenting on people. And they gave one group Eleutherococcus sinensis, and then the other group had nothing. So control groups put through excess and deficiency, light, sound, just so many things, heat, cold. So they found the people that were taking the Eleuthero, once known as Siberian ginseng, they adapted better to the transition, to the stressors, to everything. Their bodies were able to, be fortified. They actually build stamina in the body, vitality. So when people say, I need more energy, it's not caffeine that we're needing, We can have that venti latte and run and then burn out our adrenals, and what goes up must come down. But adaptogens help us build resiliency, and beautiful. So David, well written, wonderful teacher, great to study with him. He has the David Winston Institute, and still doing the circuit. Wonderful teacher. And Rosemary Gladstar, of course. I've got several of hers. I taught from her curriculum, the art and science of herbalism, and I told her so way back in the 90s. And I said, I've got all your recipes now on cards, and I'm using them. I'm giving you credit, when I use your recipes to teach others how to make fire cider or a salve or facial lotion. I credit you. And she said, well, honey, if you change one ingredient, it's yours. Generous of heart, generous of spirit, seriously. Set up so many of the, companies and experiences that I've enjoyed in my life. Traditional medicinals, tea company, Sage Mountain, her herb school of many years in Vermont, but also California School of Herbal Studies. So family herbalism, anything, Rosemary, and she's got a great Instagram presence now. Yeah, she's teaching a lot by Instagram. So, the herb teachers that I know and have studied with, and in categories I have here. So I've got Matthew Wood's Book of Herbal Wisdom, and his, this is one that I've taught from, actually, the practice of traditional Western herbalism. Matt's foundational, how-to book for his tissue states. Beautiful. Mm. The Book of Herbal Wisdom is the storytelling book, each herb a different chapter, and very integratively, holistic, energetic, all of those things. And then my friend and colleague, Kat Mayer's book, Energetic Herbalism. And we had Matt at Dreamtime, and then we also had him here. I've had him here, for 5 weekends. So I've studied with Matt a lot. She took it to her next level. It's Kat's work integrated with, all of our teachers in there, all of her teachers in there. So David Hoffman's books are right here. Again, one of my first, and I wanted him to represent highly so I can find them and show my students. And there's a herbal prescription for after 50, and there's, the Elder's Herbal, and just some older ones, but the one that he signed when I first found it in California is still right here. So I love that, and that's the Holistic Herbal, and of course the new Holistic Herbal is my favorite. Lay person, somebody asked me, how do I know how to do or heal that or work with plants for this condition? I'm like, that's a good herbal one. Mm-hmm. So things that I've learned from in Materia Medicas, I love those here. Maud Greaves, volume 1 and 2, hard to find, out of print, but find them, for the library, volume 1 and 2. She has stories about how to use plantain to healeth the flesh, thus saith, and so she'll quote Pliny and Culpeper and so many that I'm not remembering all the my history right now, but she'll quote the traditional Greek doctors, if you will, and has wonderful information storytelling style in the Materia Medica's volume 1 and 2 called A Modern Herbal. Anything but modern. It's just cool as heck. I like this author, Terry Willard. He founded a school in Calgary, Canada. Gosh, it's not, I'm going to have to work on that one. I was about to say Wildflower. Didn't think it is. Wild Rose College. And it's advanced herbology and a modern herbology, and both very clinical, really good for practicing herbalists that want to really understand the behind the scenes, underneath and of herbs. Simon Mills, Carrie Bone founded the school I think you're attending that had been Tysophia and translated into a whole new realm, which was through the Maryland Institute of Holistic Health? No.
Maryland University of Integrative Health.
Integrative Health.
Yes.
So Simon Mills taught my teachers in the UK. Carrie Bone has a whole herb company from Australia, and the two have merged several projects, and the phytotherapy is a textbook. I mean, it's a heavy book, it's heavy to read, but again, well documented, and they're also clinical, for sure.
Good monographs.
There you go.
Lots of stuff.
The good monographs. Then I have a lot of energetic ones, and those are a variety from the Pulse book from Matthew and friend Margie Flint, and then some face diagnostics. Peter Holmes, Energetics of Western Herbs, hard to find, but also. And back to Andrew Chevalier. If I can't find an herb in any of these books, I'll look in here. And Andrew Chevalier, also a fellow of the National Institute of Medicinal Herbalists UK, he just does such a great job of one page, pretty picture of the plant, information about where it comes from, how to harvest, how it's been used, a little bit of like tea, tincture, how we might put it into practice. It's awesome. And then of late, an herbalist that I'm getting to know by distance, haven't met, Alchemy of Herbs by Rosemary de la Forêt. So I like her stuff, and I like to follow her, and she's very informative and has a pretty book. Can you tell these are my old ones? So I've got a doctor's book from 1883, I think it is, and it was my girlfriend's grandfather's. And then I bought this one from David Winston. He's a bibliophile, self-confessed bibliophile. And so he would collect books and then put them out in a in literally paper, handout, and show what he had that he would sell. And I bought this one from him, and the signature here is January the 3rd, 1909, when it was purchased, and the person's name inscripted here. And then when I go to the front page, National Formulary, Unofficial Preparations, 3rd edition, and it's a 1906, and that was the 3rd edition. And all the plants are here. So we might turn glycyrrhiza. I always say that licorice is in here. There's just they're all here, and it's so interesting how they used it. They even have a fair-rated extract of apples. I do. Well, what they used a lot were chemicals that would have been, instead of saying magnesium sulfate or calcium, or borax or this or that, they had a melding of the plant matter, and they would make extracts. Liqueur potassii absinthius et bromidide. So solution of chlorinated sodium saccharide. Really cool. Interesting. So I've enjoyed that. And then I jumped to my pharmacy books, and Chantal gave me this one. Chantal Cabrera was my first herb teacher. I found the Pharmacognosy, Teresa and Evans, and that's one that my teachers would always refer back to. And like if you want to know like how things were actually used in pharmacies, or some weights and measures, or what the solution of dilution should be, or what percentage alcohol to extract a plant in. These are the kind of books I refer to. What I find that I most often refer to is the Merck Index. Oh, we got some creepy crawlers right there. I think it's plant parts, So this was Chantal's book, and this is the one that she gave me. Teresa and Evans, Pharmacognosy. Again, not taught in the pharmacy schools any longer. All the herbs were there for the longest time. Hi there. So these books, the Merck Index is the one I open, and I read what is glycerin. I read it right from the book because, it's hard to understand these things when we're not pharmacists. But it's the fat of alcohol. So isn't that weird? And I'm studying with a doctor, so I will get my green pharmacy, certificate through them.
services.